She'd been in the best physical condition of her life when she'd arrived at the academy, a state she'd maintained through grueling daily training sessions. But the long hours she'd spent in the cell had weakened her muscles enough to make even this small act difficult. She glanced at Zephyr, who'd stepped into the cell and was now watching her with an inscrutable expression. Just a few days ago, it would have seemed like the most natural thing in the world for him to reach for her hand and help Orelia sit up. She could still feel the lingering traces of the warmth that had spread through her body the last time he touched her. But this time, Zephyr's arms remained at his sides as he watched Orelia struggle into a seated position with her back against the wall. She knew she shouldn't be surprised by his detachment. Although they were about the same age, he was one of the most accomplished intelligence officers in the Quatra Fleet. Like Orelia, he'd been trained to maintain his professionalism in any situation, even if that meant interrogating the girl who'd kissed him in the ocean simulator. Unless a new wave of fear crashed over her. Unless he'd known her secret all along and feigned attraction to get close to her. Could he really have faked the look in his eyes that night? The tenderness and intensity with which he'd kissed her back? What's going on? What am I doing here? There has to be some mistake. It didn't take much effort to make herself sound confused and terrified instead of guilty and terrified. "You can skip the theatrics," Admiral Hayes said. "Tell us your name." "Orelia." "Your real name." "That is my real name." It was true. There'd been no need to devise a fake name. To the best of their knowledge, the Quatrans had never even laid eyes on a so-called Specter, let alone compiled a database of known secret agents. Admiral Hayes glowered at Orelia, then gave a small nod toward Zephyr. The nearly imperceptible gesture was enough to send an ominous shiver down Orelia's spine as she wondered how many times they'd performed this routine. Hayes stepping aside to let her counterintelligence expert and master interrogator do what he did best: extract information from unwilling participants. "How did you know about the spread spectrum?" Zephyr asked, his tone surprisingly light, as if they were back in his classroom instead of a high-security prison cell. "I told you. It was a lucky guess." Next to him, Admiral Hayes crossed her arms and glowered, but Zephyr merely raised an eyebrow. "You have an impressively analytic mind, Orelia. I highly doubt you ever resort to lucky guesses." He sounded more amused than accusatory, but that only made the situation feel even more chilling. It didn't matter that her life was on the line. This was just a game for him. It's all just a game. "Right," Orelia said. "We tried a number of options, but none of them worked. The spread spectrum was unlikely, but it was still worth trying." "We know you sent that encrypted transmission with the coordinates," Admiral Hayes said, ignoring Zephyr's subtle look of warning as she abandoned whatever plan they devised. "The security cameras caught you prowling through restricted areas. You were responsible for the attack. So either you're spying for the Specters, or else—" She cut herself off with a frown, as if the second option were too disturbing to say aloud. "Or else you are a Specter," Zephyr continued calmly. Her years of training kicked in, allowing Orelia to keep her voice and breath steady despite her frantically thudding heart. "A Specter?" she repeated, with as much incredulity as she could muster. "Enough," Admiral Hayes snapped. "We have sufficient evidence to lock you up on Shettyre for the rest of your life, if you even make it that far. The Quatra Federation knows we captured a spy who put the entire solar system at risk, and we have the legal authority to extract information from you by any means necessary. If you refuse to tell us the truth, then Lieutenant Pratik will be forced to resort to less pleasant methods." Orelia looked at Zephyr, desperately searching his face for a sign of sympathy, some indication that he'd do his best to protect her, but his expression remained as inscrutable as ever. She'd been trained to resist interrogation. It'd been the most frightening, grueling portion of her intense preparations.